review. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're finally copying PewDiePie's ideas because he's PewDiePie. But no, in all seriousness, I am doing a book review of Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which is a name that I will never pronounce correctly 2 times in a row, so just note that down. The reason I want to do a book review is because I haven't been watching very many movies, so I can't do a lot of movie reviews. I've been reading a lot of books, however, and this book was one of the first books I read in 6 months. Might as well talk about it to no one. The problem with reading Dostoevsky is that you can't bring him up in a conversation very easily. You can't just be like, oh, by the way, Fyodor Dostoevsky said this one time. It doesn't work. You come off like a pretentious douchebag. So I decided I'm going to set my camera up and just talk into that instead of, making friends that have similar interests. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about Notes from the Underground, a book that I found extremely different than anything else I've ever read, and very interesting and well written and good. So that's the review overall. It's very good. So Fyodor Dostoevsky, just a few things about him. He's a Russian dude from St. Petersburg, born in the early 1800s, like 1881 I believe is when he died. This book came out in 1865. So, he was alive. He was pretty popular as a writer. A lot of these writers aren't popular until they're dead. He wasn't mainstream or anything, but is anything mainstream in the 1800s? I don't know. But he was pretty popular for his time. He made some money. He was very much into this literature group that discussed anti-state books of Russia. So he was actually exiled to Siberia for a few years, and he has a few books about that as well. So, interesting guy, to say the least. That was the point of that. So this book, Notes from the Underground, is interesting in the way that I've never read a book that's framed like this. It's from the perspective of this guy who is not named, who is this social cretin. He's this weirdo that no one likes. And he's completely just kept away in his basement, and any social interaction, this guy hates it and can't handle it, and hates everyone and everything, basically. Super cynical. And he's just this dude writing all of his thoughts down. That's why it's called Notes from the Underground. He's from the underground. This is his notes. So the dude doesn't exist. It's completely fictional. The intro is funny because it says it's from this perspective of this weird guy that has not existed, but because it's so specific that he must exist in some way. So, take that for what it is. But it starts out with these great words, which is partly the reason why I bought this book, was because it started so interesting. But it starts, I am a sick man, I am a wicked man. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a serial killer or something. Nope, turns out he just has anxiety. It's good. So it's split into 2 parts. The first part is literally just the guy's philosophy on many, many issues, including fate, human desire, things along that nature. He also talks about pleasure and how everyone derives pleasure from pain. Even the most sick type of pain has some innate pleasure in the very back of our brain that we somehow get. So he's a little fucked in the head, but it's very interesting to read. And I can really see some of his points as well come through, and they're kind of funny. It's weirdly funny the way he illustrates them. He does very weird examples that will never come about, and they're completely theoretical things. But they're it's pretty funny. I gotta say, the first part of this book had me cackling a few times, I gotta say. Definitely was doing that thing where you just go, did that a bunch. Yeah, man, so that's the first part. It's basically like that. He also talks about being a lazy bones. That's another thing. He just wants to be a lazy bones. And I was like, man, this guy is fucking me. He's also, a good way to explain his whole personality is, those like me memes? Or literally me, it's called Literally Me, and it's Patrick Bateman, or Psychopath, or some weird guy, some a Chad, right? Literally Me. This guy is the opposite of that. He is a complete Wojak. That's right, we're keeping it topical. The guy that points, he's that guy. That's literally this guy. It sums it up so perfectly. It's so funny. I would make a meme of it, but about 6 people on planet Earth would get it, and it would be lame. But anyway, so that's the first part of the book. He just goes over his philosophy, and it's quite funny. He refers to the audience as gentlemen throughout the whole thing, and it's very funny. It does seem like he's really just talking his mind. And the way that Fyodor Dostoevsky does it from this other dude's perspective is so impressive. Because he had to have made up this character in his mind and then discovered why that guy thinks the way he thinks. So that's like so hard to do, obviously, and it's so specific to this book and this style of writing. It works so well. But that's basically the first part. The second part is called Apropos of the Wet Snow, which is like, what does that mean? I don't know what it means, to be honest. But the first part was called Underground. But the second part, Apropos of the Wet Snow, He does explain it right before he gets into it, but I forgot. So, Apropos of the Wet Snow is kind of like just fun little anecdotes of him being an absolute fucking weirdo. And it's quite delightful to read, I gotta say. It's a lot easier to read than the first part. The first part I had to go over every page 3 or 4 times, because I could not understand a fucking thing that this guy was saying half the time. He talks in so many positives, it's like the sentences go on for 10 years, and I don't know what we're talking about by the end. I'm like, what did he even just try to say? But that's also probably just because I haven't read a book in a very long time, so that could be it. I might just be a dumbass too, that's a chance. So yeah, Apropos of the Wet Snow is a lot easier to read. It's actually stories, it's not just philosophy. And the stories are quite funny. One of them, he gets slighted by a police officer who like scoots him out of the way so he can go through like during like a fight or something. And he gets so slighted by this, that he writes like 4 pages describing the emotions of being treated like cattle and doing all this stuff just because the police officer like scooted him out of the way. And he just got so pissed at this. He went out of his way. He bought new clothes. He did all of these things. He got an advance on his salary, literally to just go see this guy, see the police officer in the street and bump him. Not hit him, just shoulder bump him, and not like, he just wanted to prove that he is someone that can affect this guy in some way. He's not a fucking slave or coward or anything like that. So he went, for one social like minor thing that no one would ever care about within like 30 seconds, he has this like month-long adventure hyping himself up and doing all these things to just bump the police officer. And it is so weird, but it's so satisfying at the same time. I gotta say, it would make a great short film. I gotta say, it'd be fantastic as a short film. I might adapt it. That's right. Copyright. Right now I'm adapting it. It's official. But the last story is the one that I found the most interesting. God, is it hard to read at some points. It is just so embarrassing. But basically, a bunch of his schoolmates are sending off one of their other schoolmates who's going somewhere, going to the military, going to do service or something. So they're sending him off with like a big dinner / drinking and, going to the brothel and doing all the, bachelor party shit. And he just straight up invites himself because he happens to be like in the room with them. He's like, I'll come. And they're like, what? We hate you. And he's like, I'm gonna come. They're like, please don't. They even like change the time to try to like throw him off, but he just waits and he goes. And then he makes an absolute fool of himself left and right. I mean, everything goes wrong. Everyone hates him. People are cursing at it. He sucks. The whole dinner, it lasts for like years and years and years, it felt. He stays silent some of the time, just awkwardly sitting there, and the other time he like speaks out. He like really speaks out, makes a big scene. And everyone's just trying to have a good time, and they're just like, fuck this guy, why is he here? And they even try to leave settings so he would like not follow him, and he's like drunk at this point too. So they leave. Man follows them with like because they don't have cars at this time, like a buggy, I guess. He gets in this dude's like taxi buggy and just like screams at this guy to go faster so he doesn't lose them, because he's just trying to prove a point to them of something. I don't even know what the point he's trying to prove. He's just so petty that he just wants to prove that he can have a dinner with these people and be respectful, and he fucking can't. He can't control himself. I don't even know what he's trying to prove at this point. It's so frustrating to read, honestly. But God, is it funny. And man, is it embarrassing to read. It's like, oh man, it's like reading someone's diary. It's like, oh, stop, please stop doing it. But at the brothel, they ditch him at the brothel finally, and he's too drunk to follow. He ends up waking up next to this beautiful young lady. For some reason, he's finally of sound mind and can speak to a human being for the first time in the entire book without fucking up insanely. So he speaks to her, he gives her advice, and he paints the world as this like horrible picture for her. She's like, you're working in this brothel, next thing you know, you'll be dead in the street like this one girl I saw literally yesterday. And she's like, what the hell is wrong? And so they kind of build this relationship over this one conversation, and at the end, he gives her his address so she can come and find him. That turns out to be a huge mistake. because as soon as he gets home, he realizes what he's done, and he immediately regrets it because he, again, is terrified of social interaction. And now there's even a pressure that he's like some wise, noble old man that like can really understand her situation and help her out. And he's like, no, I'm a fucking idiot. It's like, no, absolutely not, I can't help you out. And so he's freaking out, like she doesn't come for a few days, so he's like, oh, thank God she never came, I don't have to see her ever again. And then finally she comes. She comes at the worst possible time, when he's yelling at his servant person, like his housekeeper, and just screaming at his housekeeper for literally staring at him, for just, because he didn't pay him. The guy was just staring at him like, can I get my money? And he just goes off on this guy. Then she shows up. He has a breakdown. He has a mental breakdown to her. And she's like, what the fuck? Why did I come here? But she's so understanding too. She gets it because she's in a similar like mindset too. And so she's like helping, she's like coaxing him through it. And he just won't stop berating her. He keeps going. And it's so frustrating because she's like, you know, what you said to me was so important, blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, fuck you, get out of my house, get out, you need to leave. Like, he keeps saying it over and over. So finally, she's just like, Jesus, man, all right. She leaves, and she never comes back. And he is left alone in the apropos of the wet snow. But yeah, loved that part. It was crazy. It was so hard to put down. It was so interesting to see their dynamic. But yeah, super interesting book. I've never read a book from the perspective of another character like this, especially one's philosophy of another character. Like, that's so insane. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna read more. I gotta say, if his other books are anything like this, just like style-wise, not like section-wise, but like style-wise, like style of writing, he might be my favorite author of all time already. I mean, this book was so good. Absolute 10 out of 10. It had me chuckling, such great dialogue, such great thing, like you don't expect it to go the way it does. It's so unpredictable. The guy's so frustrating, but you almost understand him because he paints his philosophy in the beginning, but it's just like, I can't agree with it, so I don't understand. But it's super good. Fyodor Dostoevsky, man, knocked it out of the park. I want to read his other books. The Idiot is his other one, The Brothers Karamazov, which I do believe is a movie. I want to say The Brothers Karamazov is a movie. I could be wrong. And a few others that I really want to read. The Siberia one, I'd like to read that one as well. But man, I gotta say, very, very good. I love the cover too. I can't see it. It's a new cover. This is a new-ish edition of it. It was translated by Richard Pavir and Larissa Volkanovsky. And they're very, they actually translated The Brothers Karamazov as well. And War and Peace, which is a pretty big one. You know, War and Peace is like the biggest book ever made. But yeah, so that's Notes from the Underground. Go read it if you want.